the silver car performed well on a test drive. So basically here we're going to start part 3. Basically what is going to be left to do mainly is going to be we're installing a big turbo kit. We have a fuel system. It's going to be a pump and a return kit. We're still going to be using the stock lines, stock rail. We have upgraded injectors, 3-bar map and tip. We're doing a fuel pump rewire. It is getting a 450 in tank. It's a smaller 50 trim. I don't know if they called it a 256. Not quite sure. But it's a Borg Warner. I actually had this kit. I was going to put it on my blue car, but I ended up getting something else. So I kind of passed this one on. Everything's pretty much new or nearly new. So let's take a look at what we got there. Oh, and we are also going to be installing the 3-inch MPX catback and with a downpipe off of this turbo. So that's going to really help too. So let's take a look at some of this stuff. Like I said, here's our turbo kit. A lot of this stuff is either new or nearly new. I have an AGP log manifold. Everything's decent. All the bolts are nice. Have all the locks. Just going to need cleaned up before we install it. This turbo was installed for a very short time. I mean, no play whatsoever. Very clean, very nice. All right, so it's got the smaller. I like this one here because it has the smaller 48 on it instead of the 60. So this thing should spool pretty darn quick. Here's our oil line. I got a new dump tube. This is pretty much nearly new AGP pipe. Here is our new tile sport valve. Okay, and then I have one of the heat shields. This came with an AGP kit. New gasket. You can use OEM or these as long as it is the layered gasket. You're good to go. We have 1000cc injectors. Like I said, there's our sensors. We have a DCR fuel pump with the 450 in it. We are going to be installing an E85 safe sender. Here is our fuel pump rewire. We have the AGP return kit, and I have a stud kit, DCR stud kit, if it's so needed. It looks like this is actually set up. You can run it into the DCR one, which will be pretty cool. I did actually install one of these before. We didn't have a return line set up. So there's that. We still have to unbox the exhaust, which is right here. We are going to be... there will be a video for just this on the unboxing. So you might see that before you see this. But we're going to be removing all of the stock turbo components off of this, showing you how to put the big turbo kit on, everything to do with that, getting the exhaust removed. I'm going to show you what vacuum lines you need to get rid of, because we're going to be pretty much eliminating all of this and running a manual boost controller. What we're going to do as far as dropping the tank and installing all of that stuff also. All right, so let's get started on this project. I'll keep you updated. Like I said, I'm gonna do like I did the first two. I'll break stuff off and I'll do small install stuff, and I'm gonna be doing like an overall. But yeah, let's get something done here. All right, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna be removing the stock turbo off of the srt4 here, because we're gonna be installing a big turbo kit. And that turbo kit is going to include everything from the exhaust manifold to the turbo to the O2 housing, different oil lines, coolant lines, all that fun stuff. All right, so what we're going to do first is we're going to remove our battery. We're going to remove our vacuum lines and solenoids, just get that stuff out of the way. I'm going to remove my coil and my wires just so I have room to reach down over top of stuff. Okay, there's one way to get down in there. And then I'm going to get down in here. I'm going to try to remove this overflow bottle, which is pretty easy. That's a 10 mil up here, a 10 mil down there. Obviously, you know, if you did the coil before, it's a plug and 4 bolts, and just give these a pop. All right, battery, you have your 2 terminals and then your hold down in the back. I am going to just unplug these here for now and leave all the vacuum lines connected, and I'm just going to pull them off like that way, okay? Because we're not going to be PCM controlled boost. We're going to be a manual boost controller. So I'm going to get those 3 things out of the way. Well, 1, 2, 3, 4 things, and then we'll show you the next part. Okay, so we got most of that stuff there off. All right, now I'm going to be removing the wastegate off of here. It's just, like I said, it just kind of makes this easier the way that I'm going to do this. Unplug your O2 sensor down here if you want to. It could be easier to remove it now because sometimes they're in there and you'll be reusing that. Whatever you do, don't drop this. Be very gentle with the O2 sensors because they can be easily damaged. I'm going to then go down and unbolt the downpipe from the O2 housing. I always just here, and I reach my arm down. I can get down in here and get to, most of the time, every single one of these. You can come from the bottom. It does add a little bit of challenge because you need a long extension to come back from right around down in that area to access it. Okay, and then once that stuff's undone, I have some spray glue. I'm going to fix this, get this back up out of the way. Once we have this off, I'm probably going to come here and I'm going to crack these loose. They're like 5/8, 16 mil, and just make sure that they're not super tight. And then I'll take this ring off and I'll get the turbo out of the exhaust manifold. And at that point, the only thing that's going to be holding the exhaust manifold on will be the bolts that are holding it to the back side of the manifold on the engine here. So they're pretty easy to get to. They're pretty much all 10s across here. There's some from the bottom. Most of the time you can reach right in here this way. Like here's one I can feel. And then there isn't none in the middle. If you ever have a question about like that type of stuff, when you're working on something that you don't know, this is how that gasket is in there, okay? Goes just, goes like this, okay? So you can see there's 1, 2, and then here in the middle where the exhaust pipe is, there isn't any. There's 2 at the top, and you have 2 over here. So you can see where all of your bolts are just by simply using the gasket. Okay, so that'll help with that. So I'm going to get the downpipe unbolted. I'm going to remove this wastegate. I'm going to get on these here with a wrench. Make sure this one and the 2 in the back are loose. And then I'm going to remove this. And what I'll do is I'll probably use a rubber mallet. And then I'll tap on this because sometimes they do get tight and they stay in the manifold. And then I'm going to let this turbo hang here, okay? One reason I'm doing that is I don't have to drain any of my coolant right now at the moment. Which this is a coolant line. This one here on the top is an oil feed line. I could probably even actually unbolt this one here completely because I'm not going to have any oil coming out because I'm not going to be starting or running the engine. And the 2 that are on the back are for coolant. They are pretty high. A little bit will leak out. They give you a plug kit. So you plug this hose. And then where that lower hose goes in the back of the engine, there will be a plug. But I could show you that when we get to it. All right, so actually the turbo here is loose. I got the oil line off already. The wastegate's undone. We have the downpipe is separated from the O2 housing. I pulled out the O2 sensor. So that stuff is taken care of. Everything else is out of the way. So right now I'm getting ready to start on getting the turbo the rest of the way off. We had already drained, we got our coolant drain down here, so we're going to clean that up and then get our turbo off. I did start removing the exhaust manifold. They all have, some have studs. They're all 10mm nut and a 10mm bolt. So we have them off. There's one more bolt holding that on. I'm getting ready to remove the coolant lines. There is some other bracketry on the bottom of these from factory. Normally these will have the shields on, but for some reason this car didn't. So someone was in here and they had to already taken the shields off for whatever reason, I don't know. So that's where we're at there. Basically, to get the turbo off, I'm going to be removing the lines and make sure you don't lose your little fittings in case you have to reuse those, okay? I'll pull these out, make sure I get both fittings, pull those lines to the side. Then our return line off of the turbo, which is down here. I'm not sure if you're going to be able to see that because it's dark. Runs down through. Now there's two bolts that go in the bottom of this. They're both 8 mil, but I need to remove that whole pipe anyway. So on the bottom there is a squeeze clamp. Very similar style to this. So basically what I do is I squeeze that and then lift this turbo out through the top, and we'll have that out of the way. I'll be able to get down in here and show you. There is a small bracket on the bottom of these. I could actually probably show you that on an engine that's out. And I need to get that bracket off, and then I have one bolt holding my exhaust manifold on, then this thing will be removed. We're going to be undoing this line here and then blocking it off. I have the block offs for this and the one in the back. All right, so I wanted to show here. This time I took the turbo off this way. I removed these 2/8. I'll still have to get this out of the way. The oil feed, the lower coolant line, I removed the upper line here. We have all of them out. Now, if you have this O2 housing, you could probably try to rock the engine, or if you have other parts of the car apart, you can get it out. It's just going to be easier for me. So far, I've got 2 of the 4 nuts off. So I'm just using a wrench and a little tapper just to get them started off of the O2 housing. And when I do that, then I can just pull the O2 housing out and turn the manifold, because it's nice and flat, and slide it out. We have a couple, I think there's like 2 studs that need to come out of the cylinder head. Here's our gasket. Those are a couple things we got to finish up. I'll give you this angle, kind of just have it slid over this way. So I'm just going to take that and turn it. All of our bolts, nuts, all the good stuff that's tough to get off. All right, so we got the turbo. Manifold is off. Over here, the turbo. Man, I got stuff all over the place in the way here. Just kind of setting everything off to the side. The lower bracket, that one underneath. The other one, the little oil return lines. I got all the lines off here. These are all what we're not using, okay? So that's pretty much everything there for the stock turbo. Now, I've already got down in here and I have the oil line here installed for the turbo. I still got to clean up the back of the cylinder head. I didn't get in here and look, obviously, just as of yet. I'm hoping I can just reuse this stud. If I need to, I will remove it. Okay, so that stuff's good. I was working on, now this thing is pretty much new, but it's just been sitting for so long. Took a little Scotch-Brite pad, cleaned everything up, chased all my threads, cleaned up all my bolts here. Busy working on getting the turbo itself also prepped. Like I said, this was only on for a short time, and it was working fine when it was pulled. So I'm just going over it, getting it cleaned up, ready for reinstall. We have to, I gotta find the plug kit. Like I said, there's one that plugs this, and there'll be one that plugs this hole up here on the top, which is right here. Okay, down here's where your oil is. All right, so I gotta get a plug to fit this top one. I just can't remember where I stuck the kit, the plug kit. Yeah, so the oil line's on. We got to clean up some more stuff back in here. The manifold's ready to go. Here's our gasket. All right, so we got to get that unpackaged. I have the DCR bolt kit here. Not sure if I'm going to use it. I might just go with the AGP kit that I have and just use that instead, because I have both. Like this is the AGP stuff here with the holders. So like I said, I have those also. I might end up putting them in. I just got to get those out and use them instead. I don't know how the DCR ones are going to work. I mean, it's a bigger head. It's probably going to be more of a pain in the butt to get on there, but I'll try this and see what happens. But we're pretty much, that's where we're at. We're down to that. I'll be able to put the plug in at a later time, but right now, since I have the oil line on, I'm going to work on getting DOS AGP manifold installed. So Here we go. All right, the AGP manifold is on. You do notice this is a little. I use red silicone because it's good up to 600 degrees. My Templar TV, 650. Sorry, it's good to 650. It says to use Loctite on the paper, on the little envelope, but blue Loctite and red Loctite actually break down at a lower temperature than 650 degrees. So I put that on the threads when I install any manifolds. It keeps the stuff from vibrating out. Not only that, steel inside of aluminum. Then you ain't got to worry about nothing rusting, so it's on the inside. So our manifold's on. I have the oil line installed. All right. Right now, I want to try to get this exhaust out of the way. So let's check that out. All right, so obviously the exhaust is under the car. This is a stock exhaust. You can loosen these clamps. There is rubber bushings for the vibration. What I like to do is I take a screwdriver and I'll stick it in on this lower side. This little bit of moisture, wetness that you see here, that's WD-40. It helps make this slide off a whole lot easier. So here we go. Just like that. Okay. All right. Now this clamp up here, you can see, let me get the light here. You can see here, it's actually spinning. So it's actually loose. This thing's going to come off really easy. I already have the rubber done on that side. So let's get that side out. All right. So that has the back part off. There is also a bushing here. This one for some reason has a clamp on it that I'll have to take off. And then up front, since we already have this off, this exhaust is going to hang down some, but it will separate up there. I've already got that nut loose with a clamp for the downpipe. And it's basically the downpipe, the mid pipe, and then the tail section. And then everything's going to be off. This one here probably needs, like I said, I got to get this clamp off and put a little bit in here. And then we can get this MPX cap back installed along with this big turbo kit. Because these are our finishing touches to get the rest of that stuff done. Alright, so the entire stock exhaust system is off. The tailpipe section, the mid pipe section, and the catted downpipe. Now, let's work on getting this together and installed. I have the downpipe here now, and let's get this thing fitted up. I'm going to start with hanging the tail section, and then I'll put okay, it's this one. And this one goes on next, and it's a big difference. Side by side. How does that look? Right there. Man. Just, it's amazing that the exhaust was that small stock. We are moving right along. Plugs are in for the turbo coolant. Busy working on getting the coolant back in. We're at the point of putting the O2 housing on. The turbo is mounted. I got to get this line running just a little bit differently and tighten up my oil line, my oil drain plugs. Here's my drain or my plug off for that, and I put one down in there. Same with the other bolts. We have the I put silicone on the threads, ran them in. That stuff's all good. I actually cleaned up some of the firewall, some wiped it down. Fuel return, I don't know if I mentioned that. That's in. The new injectors are in. 3-bar map, 3-bar tip. They're installed. So we're definitely getting somewhere. We have the O2 housing downpipe gasket. I just took this off, moved it out of the way so I could get in here. Like I said, man, this thing is coming together. I did get, kind of breaking this up a little bit, I did get the exhaust on. Let's take a look. All right, so there we have the exhaust on. We just got the bolts started. We're up to the mid pipe. I'm going to get the O2 housing, or the O2 housing on, and then the downpipe. I have to run the return line. I don't know if you can see that hanging up there. I'll have to run that back, and I'm getting ready to drop the fuel pump, the fuel tank to do the fuel pump. I got to do the fuel pump rewire, and that'll get that set up. Like I said, we are really, really close. A couple things need done. Everything's getting cleaned up, everything's getting double checked, and it's going together one step at a time. All right, so we finished tightening up the oil line. I have the O2 housings now installed. I started to, like, I have the return line run back for the fuel. I have the rewires now connected. It's kind of hard to see that down in there. And then we have our dump tube is on. These are always a little close right here, so you almost have to zip tie this back. I don't know if you can see that in there, but it's right down here. So I got to put a zip tie to hold that back. I might even wrap it with a little bit of tape. So that is all installed. We got to install our cover, which I usually like to wait to do these until after I get it started up, because then I can double check my oil lines and make sure I don't have any leaks there, because nothing will be in the way. All right. We are down to, we got to run vacuum lines, and we got to get this fuel set up here installed. Okay. So that is our canister. Here's our E85 safe sending unit. These are the old injectors. They give you another fuse. I'm probably going to update that, even though we are running the rewire, so there will be plenty of power back there on a separate circuit over what's there. These are my extra bolts from something else. I had to steal one. But we have everything right now is together. Like I said, we got to drain the tank yet. Downpipe is on. We need to install the intermediate pipe for the exhaust. Right here. 2 new gaskets. All new bolts to install that. So we're going to work on getting this thing here installed. This will only go in one way like I'd shown. The angle of this right here, you can see it's actually offset there on the pipe, because the pipe is straight and the flange is offset just a little bit. So I believe it'll go just like that. So we can get this installed. I'm going to get that on, and then I'll show you what everything looks like underneath the car. All right, so it's the next day. I know I'm doing a bunch of jumping around between the exhaust and the turbo stuff, and we got the other stuff pulled apart. I'm not sure if it's going to be 1 or 2 parts, but anyway, here we go. The turbo's on. We got the charge pipe on. I had to clock the turbo a little bit. I got to get this fitted in here just a little bit better and strapped out of the way, which I don't know why they had it going this way. Normally they come up around the back. No problem though. Drain pipes on. I did get the rest of the exhaust bolts tightened up, and then this line here, if you remember, which would be a couple minutes for you, was pretty ugly. So that's fixed up. We're going to be working on getting this zip tied down where it needs to be underneath. I got to get the vacuum lines run for this. So I got those out. I set them somewhere. Here we go. So we got the connector stuff for that, which will be here. I have the battery on the battery charger. We still need to do the return line, drop the tank. Still have to do the return line, drop the tank, install the fuel kit. The rewire is down here laying on the ground. All right, so right now Everything is finished being installed. Seriously. Okay, right now everything's finished being installed with the fuel system. We tested it. We don't have any leaks up here. We do have 5 more gallons yet to install. Let's get down here. I'll show you what we're doing, or what we did. So we have our fuel pump installed. I'm getting ready to go back through here and trim off all of these zip ties up through here. But you can see we have our rewire tucked up in here. It's screwed here with the DCR return, instead of running back to our filler neck, is a little long. So I just kind of wiggled it back and forth to use up some length, and then I kind of have it spun this way and have everything zip tied up real nice so stuff's out of the way. I also did put some contact grease on my ground, which is what I normally do, so that there's no corrosion on there and you don't have a problem with your fuel pump coming on. So that is that. The exhaust looks really good. Exhaust off. No fuel leaks. Burning, getting the gasket seated and stuff too, so all that stuff's gonna smoke a little bit here. Alright, so this thing is done. We're actually getting ready to do some data logs. I'm just gonna show you how to do that real quick, but everything's together. Big turbo's installed, fuel system's in, fuel pressure's set, heat shields are on, everything's together, nothing's leaking, everything's installed. So right now, I have it here sitting running. We're using the i3 Diablo Sport to tune this with an email tune.